Alrighty, welcome back to another episode of Two Plane Sports. Today is Wednesday, November 30th, the last day of November. Next month is early National Signing Day. Bowl selection Sunday's coming up here pretty soon. Season's over. We're rolling in the off season, and that's when people come back around and start getting excited for next year and start tuning into more Two Plane Sports episodes and content. So today's episode, we're going to be talking about coaching buzz, who could be going, who could be joining the staff. Nothing's been concrete, but there's definitely some buzz going around a few coaches. And then we're going to be talking about a couple of kids that entered in the transfer portal that are Oklahoma players and now are going to look for homes elsewhere. And then potentially who else could leave, the buzz around maybe a Dillon Gabriel or a Jalil Farouk or maybe Marvin Mims, a few people that seem to catch some hate throughout the season for one reason or another, which I don't really agree with, but it is what it is. So we're going to be talking about that. We're going to give a little shout out about Oklahoma basketball as well. They're playing some good ball towards the end of this video. So, but before we get into it, just want to say we appreciate it. We're knocking on the door 5,300. We're really rolling on the subscriber count. So if you're new here, if you've been here a few times, hit the subscribe button. It's free, easy. Like the video. Stay around for Jose's in a video challenge. And remember, if you already subscribed, when you like the video and you comment on the video, it helps us out a lot and it helps us grow and it helps us just spread the word. And then also, if you're on social media, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Apple, and Spotify, everything's linked in the description below. Our Twitter and Instagram have been going crazy recently, and we appreciate that. And part of it is also because we're knocking on the door of that early National Signing Day. So if you want an immediate reaction, up to date, up to the minute news breaks and things like that, follow us on our social medias, and then you can come into these videos and actually get more of our opinions and insight. So be sure to subscribe and follow and everything else. Everything's free. And another thing that we have is our membership program. We'll be firing that up more. But if you just want to help support us and things like that, it's easy. It's $4.99 a month. We're going to be providing some more content on there as we get into the off season and some more recruiting insight and things like that. So get enough people in there, we'll really start growing that and providing way more content in there. So after I talked for 2.5 minutes, people are probably fast forwarding right now and are ready to actually talk about the video. So obviously in our last video that we posted before thanks, actually that aired Sunday, we talked about potential coaching buzz and things like that. Who could be going, who could be leaving. And mainly we talked about the wide receivers coach. And LD Washington is there, named interim. He has not been told one way or another if it's his job permanently or if he's just, they're still deciding. And Jose, you brought up a few people like Mickey Joseph and Jeff Scott. There seems to be, obviously, Malcolm Kelly. We talked about him as well. There's buzz around him. There's been buzz around him all season, it seemed like, ever since Cale Gundy left. And then there's been some more buzz about a guy by the name of Rashad Samples. Samples is young. He's our age, which 27. Very young guy, up and coming. He played for Oklahoma State as a wide receiver. And also, had multiple stops in the collegiate ranks as far as coaching goes. He was an assistant wide receivers coach at the University of Texas. Also, I'll take that back. He started off in Houston as a student assistant, went to the University of Texas as an assistant wide receivers coach, and then eventually landed at SMU as an offensive assistant, and then running backs coach, recruiting coordinator, and then eventually promoted to assistant head coach in 2021. Well, obviously, Sonny Dykes took a job and went to TCU, and a part of that was to bring him along and brought a few other coaches along. And he was hired at TCU and was able to immediately flip a few guys that were committed to SMU, like a Jordan Hudson. I think a lot of people that have been following our channel and following recruiting in general know that name. I think Chance Biddle is also there. Chase Biddle was another guy he flipped, and there's a few other guys that he was able to flip or he's recruited that are high profile players, and Jordan Hudson was someone that was once committed to Oklahoma, and Oklahoma wanted it. So he's a high level recruiter in the DFW, Texas area, He's currently the running backs coach for the Los Angeles Rams. So obviously the Rams are not having their best year, but he ended up leaving before the TCU season even started, got the job with the Rams and made the bolt to the NFL. Now, would he really be interested in moving from the NFL back to the collegiate ranks? I'm not sure. He probably saw LA, he probably got a nice pay bump, and it's the NFL and he's young, and why not, right? What do you think about Samples? There's no for sure one way or another, but it seems like there is some buzz around him.
Well, either way, it seems like we're not going to know. If we don't know for sure by, let's just say, middle of next week, end of next week, who the wide receivers coach is, we're probably not going to find out until the end of bowl season, potentially, or the NFL season. So this could go on until early January, like worst case scenario, I guess, because if TCU makes a good run at this and makes it all the way to the national championship, they're going to be playing, and Malcolm Kelly more than likely will be focused on, the games at hand. And who knows if they make it that far, what reason does he have to leave TCU if they're going to be a contender long term? From his perspective, if it's Rashad Samples, the NFL season goes all the way until first week of January, so we would have a while there. With both of these guys, two things that stick out. Young, Rashad Samples is very young. Like you said, he's our age, 27 years old, has really moved up in coaching rankings quickly, which shows how highly people think of him. But to me, I think it's how good at recruiting they are, and that seems to be what is separating them from other candidates, especially recruiting in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. That's been really the biggest thing for Coach Samples. When he was at the collegiate level, like you said, he was able to snag two guys away from Oklahoma under Lincoln Riley, which, as we all remember and know and are still watching, he recruits very talented, highly touted players out of high school. Whenever he was at Oklahoma, thinking back to before he left last year, the 23 class was made up of Brandon Ennis, Mekhi Lemon, DeAndre Moore, and still had a chance at Jalen Hale. Those were, at the time, wide receivers 1 through 4, or they were all in the top 5 in wide receiver ranking at that time. Clearly that changed, but we remember the 2020 class with Spencer Rattler, Trajan Bridges, Hazelwood, all those guys. So he recruits very well at receiver because his offense is very explosive in the passing game. And Samples was able to seal two very talented receiver and a talented athlete in Chase Biddle. I think that because this staff is trying to focus so hard in the Dallas area, in the Fort Worth area, you have Jay Valai, who's already very well connected down there, but having two very young coaches that can connect to the players maybe a little bit better, that seems to be what is separating both of these candidates from the guys that I brought up, which, like I mentioned, they would bring in more coaching experience and do well at recruiting, but these guys bring in the youth, trying to have a youth movement, which we see in coaching all the time. Jim Harbaugh had to go through that whenever he, the 2020 season at Michigan, very bad season, and essentially the contract negotiation was to get more money for his staff, and he created a youth movement with all his staff, and look where they are now. I think that's what Venables is trying to do from the get-go, trying to get young guys that will connect with recruiting and trying not just developing his players, but developing his coaches. Because look at the staff, how it's put together now, all very young. And for the most part, it's fair to say probably inexperienced when it comes to how long they've actually coached. Outside of Bates and Roof, Finley's pretty young coach, pretty young into his coaching career. DeMarco Murray's still pretty young into his coaching career. Levy, first time, as we've mentioned multiple times, first time he's had full reins of the offense where there's not like a second guy there to help game plan with him or take that lead as a game planner. On the defensive side, Chavis is the first time position coach. Jay Valai is very young in his coaching career. Brandon Hall is still pretty young in his coaching career, at least at this rank. Before Oklahoma, he was the interim head coach at Troy. So they're all still trying to move up and get better. Venables is trying to establish that. I guess it depends on how you feel about it. I think he should probably look for more experience like a very experienced and someone that's performed well in Coach Bates. Maybe bringing in someone like that on the offensive side. Just again, that's just a thought, but looks like youth is going to essentially prevail here to try to get better recruits and have these guys connect better to the kids, and the coaching and the position coaches having that um, you know connection because of their ages.
And there are a lot of players on this team that do like LD Washington and like him as a player or like him as a coach and like him as a person. There's nothing wrong with LD. I think the sign where we'll know where Oklahoma's going elsewhere is if they don't name someone soon. Because at the end of the day, if he's the guy, there's no reason to drag this out and drag this past the National Signing Day, early National Signing Day. There's no reason. You shut it down, you give him a contract, and you lock him in if he's the guy. If Oklahoma doesn't give him the contract by, say, mid to end of next week, at that point, it makes me kind of think, okay, it might be Samples or Kelly, or it could be someone else that we don't know, of course, because also you've got the national or the transfer portal. The deadline's December 5th, and we're going to talk about Theo Weiss entering, but Oklahoma lost out on Anthony Evans. Theo Weiss entered. They need another receiver, and they need another receiver either through, or maybe even two, maybe one from the portal and one from maybe this class late in the 23 cycle. They're able to pick up one guy, but you kind of need to have a coach in place. And I will say, with the turnover, you think Dennis Simmons, and he's gone. Cale Gundy was the guy. He's gone. LD Washington, he's the guy. And now he could be gone. And then you bring in another guy. That's their fourth coach. I mean, I do think there's no longevity there, at least recently now, especially if you remove Washington. And some of these guys like Theo Weiss, I mean, think about it. He's had 3 different coaches now there. And then if you bring in another guy, say Marvin Mims came back. I mean, Mims, this would be his 4th coach. And, I'm sure every guy's got their, way that they want to coach you or teach you, and it's learning something new. And it's like, they just learn a brand new offense and they can't have the same coach there in place. The turnover does eventually take a toll on kids, I think, because you're trying to figure everything out with this new culture, this new offensive coordinator, and you're changing again in your wide receivers coach. It's just a lot. So part of me thinks it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world to keep Washington. Like, I mean, he is solid. He does recruit well. Players like him. I don't see why he shouldn't be kept. I mean, maybe it's not quite as good, but I could also argue that maybe some of the kids we're still learning a lot of the season in the offense, and how it's just like anything. How can you really know perfect your craft if you don't even know the offense fully? And how can you coach that? So that's the other side of the token. Hey, you're muted.
My bad. LD was trying to do the same catch up that the players were, because he was just an analyst before Cale Gundy resigned. He needed to catch up quickly. If he is extended and made the full-time wide receivers coach, he would have a base knowledge now of the offense where he would feel more comfortable coaching. I think you brought up probably the best point with the urgency in hiring a wide receivers coach should be priority 1. If you can't get a Rashad Samples to leave the Rams ASAP, or a Malcolm Kelly to step away from the Horned Frogs after the Big 12 championship, it is not a beneficial move to wait until January, because you do have early national signing day. And I think the guys that are in the class at the moment are pretty locked in, but you do need to start going after the transfer portal. You do need to start going after a couple, maybe 1 or 2 more guys at the high school level, because again, turnover. Theo Weiss, we'll talk a little bit more about his effect leaving, but potentially Marvin Mims, if he decides not to come back and go into the NFL draft. Those are one very pivotal piece and one of the more experienced wide receivers in that room that won't be returning next season. And you'll have a pretty fresh look at another group of wide receivers, which isn't ideal when it comes to sports at the college level. You want as much experience as you can have on the field, because when you have to do full turnovers like we saw this year, it doesn't always work out well because people are trying to get used to being on the field, being a starter. That pressure on them is different than it was before. There's the adjustment period, right? Even if they are playing a lot, so it's going to be important. And I think whoever the coach is going to be hopefully is established by the end of this of championship weekend, because going any longer than that, you're going to really put a damper on any extended recruiting. And in-home visits are starting soon. If you don't have a wide receivers coach that can visit, it's going to be Levy and probably DeMarco Murray or Jay Valai and the rest of the offensive staff, which isn't the worst thing. We saw it happen last year. I can't remember the coach's name, but he ended up going to San Diego State, I believe. Pretty young guy. He was a corners coach that was helping recruit during in-home visits. Vinny. Yeah, Coach Vinny, I think. But yeah, you would have that similar situation, but then they'd move on. So I mean, at the end of the day, I think whoever the coach is, if it's one of the guys I mentioned in our previous video or Kelly or Samples, it's got to be done ASAP, because the longer you wait, the more harm it's going to do. Maybe not harm, but it's to a detriment for sure, because you're not going to be able to get the jump start that coach needs.
Yeah, and I do think I think Samples would leave LA in December. They're not going to go to the playoffs. There's really no reason for him to commit to him unless the money's not as good and he's getting paid way more to the Rams. So I would see if he's the guy. I would like to think that he would jump on board in the next few weeks. But overall, my last thought is I just don't want LD Washington to be. I feel like what people have done is they've been frustrated with this offense, which overall, when you sit back and look at it holistically, there were ups and downs, but it was pretty darn good overall. I mean, they put up a lot of points and they had a lot of yards. I just don't want LD Washington to be the scapegoat. And it seemed like, people were coming after Levy, but they know that Washington is not the official guy. He's the interim guy, and he's an easy guy to push out and blame. That's the reason. I don't think he's the reason, and I just don't want him to be the one that gets the blame and the scapegoat in this scenario, because I don't necessarily think he's going to get a fair shake at this. That's were there times in the season where I thought the receiving routes and catching wasn't the best? Yes, I mean, but there's a multitude of other factors that played a role in this season, and I don't want Washington to get the short end of the stick because of that. That's all. You're muted again.
I got to stop doing that. Venables or Levy need to make sure if they do move on from Washington as the full-time receivers coach, that they can find a spot for him that is at least comparable, because no one is ever going to want to be demoted and stick around. If he does not end up not getting the receivers coach position, he'll probably move on to a different opportunity, maybe at a smaller school where he would have either a similar role or a promotion in a way, at least title wise, so that he can continue growing his career as a coach. So we'll see, but maybe Washington is the guy, at least for the next few years, so that he can start growing as a coach and eventually bring in Malcolm Kelly once TCU starts to go a little bit downhill, if it's not this year.
Yeah. I don't know. And then there's another coach that another one that they want to come after is Ted Roof. And Ted Roof is an easy guy to blame, an easy target, and he's been a target of a lot of social media and, media questions and people in general. And what his future is, I don't really know. I mean, I don't think they even know yet. And I don't think there's one way or another for sure he's gone or for sure he's staying. He might find a new role. I think that's what we talked about a lot. I think there's going to be some responsibility changes, role changes, and things like that this offseason, maybe on both offense and defense after a year of experience. I don't necessarily see Roof totally gone from the staff. I don't know. I just don't see it.
And if he's all right with taking a step back from being the play
Well,
caller,
yeah,
that would
that's the
have to
thing.
be what needs to change, right? But replacing him, if he was to be let go, or if he moves on to a different place, wouldn't be as difficult as replacing the LD Washington, because we would essentially need to bring in a coach from the outside in to try to be the wide receivers coach, to be the play caller. At least on the defensive side of the ball, you have Jay Valai and Todd Bates both as co-defensive coordinators. One of them, they could either share the responsibility still and work together for game planning, and then one of them would be the play caller, whoever's more comfortable in the box, or however they would split that responsibility, or one of them would get the bump to full-time defensive coordinator. One of them would still keep the co-defensive coordinator, and then move on from there, and then bring in a new linebackers coach. That way, there's not a guy trying to be that try to fill in the full Ted Roof role, because that would be difficult, especially when you don't know the defense.
Yeah, and I will say, I don't think, just me from the outside looking in, I don't feel like they're going to hire some hot shot young guy as the defensive coordinator from the outside to come in and install his defense. At the end of the day, this is going to be Brent Venables' defense and his scheme, and I don't see them going out and hiring some guy to overhaul the defense again. That's not happening. I just don't. I can't remember. I've seen the Mississippi State defensive coordinator. I forget his name, but there's just buzz. People are throwing names and seeing what sticks. They're throwing it at a dartboard and seeing what sticks. I just don't think that they're going to hire some young up and coming coach to be the defensive coordinator at Oklahoma. You hired a defensive coordinator as your head coach, and he brought his scheme, and you saw the issues and the growing pains. Why start this over again? We already went through 1 year of it. Let's continue down this path. So
yeah, I think the natural answer for the defense is just bumping
internal.
one of those guys internally, and then finding maybe an analyst would get a bump to being the linebackers coach at that point.
Yeah, or some sort of shift. So I just those are my expectations, and I might be totally wrong, and I'll admit that I'm wrong. And some people might be watching this, be like, "No, they're going to go out and hire some young shot, hot shot guy." I don't believe it. You hired the defensive coordinator as your head coach for a reason, and you trust him.
It's stability at the end of the day. At whatever level of sports, you need the stability to continue progressing in the right direction.
Yeah. Well, that's all the coaching stuff that we at least wanted to talk about. There might be more. There might not be any shifts at all, and this might be just what it is, just for stability. But we'll definitely be keeping an eye out on it. And there's a lot of moving parts this offseason, so we can move on and talk more transfer portal. Theo Weiss, 2020 or 2019 5-star wide receiver from Allen, Texas. Ended up entering in the transfer portal this week, announced his intentions I guess he hasn't announced his intentions. I take that back. There's a report that came out from Mike Roach, who is the 247 contributor for the Texas board, and he came out with a report saying that he is expected to enter his name into the transfer portal. But Theo Weiss has actually not came out on Twitter, Instagram, or anything like that, at least as we're recording this, and that I've seen that is officially acknowledged that. But the expectation is he will be in that portal and he will be gone. He'll leave with 2 years of eligibility because of his, I think, a medical hardship that he had that one season where he played one game, and then obviously COVID. So he's leaving with 2 years of eligibility. I don't think there's any ill will wished on him by the staff, or anyone's upset with him moving on. It just never seemed like he had a great last game at Texas Tech, probably one of his best games of his career, and it was a good audition for every other program. He just never emerged, and I think he's a little bit of a victim of, one, injuries, two, instability at the coaching level, at his position coach. He's on his third coach. So between the coaching turnover and not only him, but the new offense, the head coach, uncertainties at quarterback. I mean, there's just and Spencer Rattler struggle. I mean, there's so many things that kind of worked against Theo, and I don't think there's any hard feelings. And I think a contender, I think he's going to go into the SEC or maybe in the Big Ten for one of the top, top Power 5 schools. And I think he will be a guy that could contribute, and I think he will have a pretty solid year. And it could be like a Jaden Hazelwood. For one reason or another, Jaden Hazelwood never really emerged, and he had a pretty solid year. I think 700 plus yards with Arkansas, and he entered in the draft today, as I saw it this morning. So best of luck to Hazelwood. I just think that Theo Weiss is more of it's better for both parties to move on. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. And this one seemed to be pretty obvious halfway through the season. I mean, he wasn't even part of the game plan for Texas, and I'm sure that did not go over very well when he was told that. And I know the quarterback situation was iffy, but I mean, he was the starter day one for this staff. Still, he was wide receiver 2 alongside Marvin Mims and Joe Farouk being 3. But he eventually just wasn't really on the field very much. When he wasn't really utilized. I mean, there's plenty of reasons why this one doesn't come as a surprise, and it wouldn't be surprising to me if we saw a lot of guys, whatever's left of the 2021, 2020 classes, are going to be the guys that eventually end up going to the portal. I don't see it being a huge haul of guys going in, and I guess huge is subjective because I'm comparing it to last year, where we not only did we have a decent amount of guys leave through the portal, but we also had a decent amount of guys leave to the NFL draft. It doesn't seem like it'll be the exact that type of turnover, but it doesn't help when you lose experience from a room. Now, the wide receiver position, there's still guys that are going to be impactful moving forward, right? We saw Jaden Gibson, a guy that a lot of people were excited for going to the year after he came in with Nick Evers when they were both initially committed to Florida. Once the staff initially came in and started recruiting, they got 2 guys to flip pretty quickly. The expectation is Joel Farouk still supposed to come back. I know there's been rumors about him potentially leaving, but it seems like everything is trending towards him being back next year. And it makes sense, especially if Marvin Mims leaves. He would be the most experienced player and wide receiver 1 going into his 3rd year at Oklahoma. Nick Anderson didn't touch the field very much this year. Seemed like at first it was due to injuries. I'm not sure if that was still the case later on in the season, but Coach Levy always talked about him pretty early on in the season, how he was excited about him being an impact player once he got on the field. So Nick Anderson's there. L.B. Bunkley-Shelton, transfer from last year. J.J. Hester still there. So there's guys, Gavin Freeman. I mean, there's definitely, it's not like they're lacking players. Could they use a lot more? Maybe 2 or 3 more guys to help out with pushing each other, getting to the next level, making sure there's depth, of course. But they're not lacking either. It would just be a supplement to get those guys in that we have in the 23 class, and Jaquez Petaway and Keon Brown, right? So Theo is definitely going to, him leaving is definitely not great, but it's not like it's the Oklahoma offense is going to be missing a lot next year either.
No, and there's just a multitude of things. The one thing that does suck is he does have a lot of experience, and with him moving on, and then the potential of Marvin Mims, we'll talk about him here in just a minute, but if he does decide to leave, the experience level does drop dramatically, and definitely a portal target will happen. They'll pick up a young kid out of high school, and then they're going to have to go get a receiver that has a little experience to help bolster that wideout room. Another guy that entered in today, as we're recording this, which is Tuesday, Jordan Mukes. He's a part of the 21 class. You referred to the 21 class of potentially more people leaving from there. He entered in. He was a 4-star out of Choctaw, Oklahoma. Bigger guy. I think he's like 6'3". He never saw a snap this season. They're most likely the guys that you're talking about that are going to enter the transfer portal, or who already did, are guys that maybe didn't fit the culture, didn't fit the scheme. You look at Theo Weiss. I think it's more of a multitude of things. I don't think necessarily he didn't fit in, but I think Jordan Mukes maybe didn't fit into the culture or what they're looking for out of that position. You're also talking about Joseph Wette. He left earlier this year. Kevontae Henry's gone. Seems like rule issues. He left midseason. And then everyone's talked about, and maybe we need to talk about him as well, as Clayton Smith. That has been removed from the roster, and those five seem pretty obvious. It's unfortunate about Jordan Mukes because when you look at him on paper at 6'3", 6'2", 6'3", somewhere in there as a safety, he was really raw coming out of high school. He played basketball, but he just kind of started picking up football later. I think it's just his measurables really helped in his athletic ability. And maybe he just never really emerged. Obviously, he never emerged. It does suck to lose a guy with that much athletic ability, though.
Yeah, definitely. And with him, he bulked up a lot this last offseason when Schmidt came in. I mean, if you look at his high school pictures, he was, 18-year-old basketball player, thin, long. This last offseason, he had looked like he put on like 15, 20 pounds of muscle, and he looked like a dude that could have made an impact physically. Now, the second most important part that we've heard the coaches say multiple times is being able to learn the scheme and fitting in to the position that they want you at. Sounds like that's where the mark was missed. And Robert Spears Jennings coming in whenever we started having some safety health issues probably did not go over well with Mukes because he is more experienced, at least just playing at the college level. But like we mentioned last year, it was a fresh start for everyone, and RSJ was able to pick things up a little faster with this staff and this defense. So it's fair. My expectation, like I said, it's really going to be guys that are a little older in regards to being in college. Like, it would be a huge surprise to me if we lose anyone from the 2022 class because they're freshmen for the most part. Most of them probably didn't expect to be day one players. Like most, I mean, I'm sure that a lot of them want to be and would like to be, but the thing that I've said multiple times now, the shift between high school and college, no matter what level you play at, what state, if it's the highest level of Texas or California or Florida, high school football does not compare to the highest level of college football. And it's just that transition period. Yes, I understand that there are outliers and exceptions to that norm, but for the most part, it doesn't happen. Next year, if they don't see the field, then you'll start seeing some of those 22 guys hit the portal. But that would be the biggest surprise. Any 22 guy that leaves, I think, would be concerning because then there may be, if it outside of Cavante, because it sounds like it was more so a rule, like him not being able to go with team rules and follow whatever's asked of him. But if it's just simply they don't want to be at Oklahoma, then to me it would be concerning because then there might be something. Maybe the coaches are a little bit too stubborn with whatever they're trying to accomplish, and sometimes that's good, but sometimes they need to have some leniency, and that'd be my biggest thing. Seeing some 22 recruits say that they don't really want to be at Oklahoma and it wasn't a rule issue or something that the team forced out.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I don't see much of the 22 class really leaving outside of Kevontae Henry. As I mentioned, those five guys, those are the expectations. Two have been, one's been public, one is reported to be, most likely entering the portal, and the three others are because they're off the roster and have left at one point in the season for whatever reason. And, unfortunately with Clayton Smith coming out of Texarkana, Texas, in the 21 class, he was a top 40 player in the country, edge player, 6'4", 220, high expectations. The problem is he's like 6'4", 6'3" now, 240, 250 pounds. He's a guy that was an in-betweener. He just didn't fit the scheme. And I think that's just, he was recruited by the previous staff in the speed D type deal. Maybe USC circles back and tries to pick him up with Grinch. Or he might not want to go out that far, but he just didn't fit what Ben Olds is wanting to do. And I think that's what somewhat of this season has resulted in, is Venables wanted to do this, and it's like fitting a square peg in a round hole. You just don't have the pieces to do that. So it's unfortunate for Clayton Smith. It just didn't seem like he had the physical traits or what Venables wanted, and that's just sometimes it's just mutually beneficial for both parties to move on, and the scholarship frees up for a guy that could contribute.
Yep. And I got into a discussion with someone on Twitter not long ago. I don't remember when, but they were talking about how this staff is not picking up talented players, and they essentially, by talented, they were frustrated that they wasn't 4 and 5-star guys, which I understand. It's more exciting to see 5-star recruits commit to Oklahoma, high 4-star recruits commit to Oklahoma, but sometimes it's more so a matter of fit than it is a matter of how you produce that the high school level, because those stars are essentially just projections from how you performed in high school. That changes. We at all levels. I mean, Adam Thielen was a guy that went undrafted, really didn't do anything in college, went to a really small college, and is now and became one of the better receivers in the NFL. It's a matter of how much work you put in and how well you fit to what is being asked of you. So Clayton Smith is just a victim of that, where a lot of people had a lot of hype because he was very highly recruited, but he does not fit into this scheme. So, like you said, it wouldn't surprise me if he ends up at USC, because that was the coaching staff that recruited him. That's the scheme that he felt he fit in, and the coaches felt he fit in. So, it's very likely that there's a good chance that we at least hear that he's being recruited by the Trojans, and maybe even ends up in LA.
Definitely, or a similar scheme of some sort. So moving on to talking more still guys that could potentially enter. Now, do I think I agree with you? Are there going to be a ton? So we named off 5 guys that are it's expected for them to be in the portal for one reason or another. Now, there's bound to be more. There's going to be more guys that will be entering in over the next few days, next week or so. And a few guys that have been getting a lot of buzz have been like a Jalil Farouk. We talked about Farouk. It makes no sense. You said earlier, it makes no sense for him to leave. He's emerging as a top level receiver. This was his first season of really contributing and really being a fixture in this offense. And this is his first year in the offense. He's also on another coach. He had some turnover coming in. Last season he had Dennis Simmons, he had Cale Gundy. Now he has LD Washington. I mean, he's a guy that has succeeded despite the things around him, and that's how talented he is. So you're going to be the number 1 guy at Oklahoma. There's no reason for him to go to USC. I'm not saying he wouldn't. I just think he has the ability to put together a great season next year and go to the NFL. And while Caleb Williams is one of his best friends, he'd have to go move everything, pick up everything, learn the offense again, and compete. He has emerged as the guy or one of the guys at Oklahoma. Why would you do that? You're muted again.
Did it again. Yeah, I saw it in your face. There's no reason to push the restart button again. I mean, it would definitely be a surprise if he left, to me, because of the reasons that you just laid out. And even if Marvin Mims does come back, he's the wide receiver to an offense that potentially would have a returning quarterback, returning running back, a lot of returning players where success should elevate. More yards, better positioning for him. He'd probably start taking more of the jet sweeps, since Drake Stoops could potentially be gone as well. So there's so much opportunity for him at Oklahoma still. And for the exact same reasons as last year, when Lincoln and Caleb left, a lot of people were thinking that that's when he was going to leave as well. He didn't, because Oklahoma had opportunities for him, and it still does, especially with the year that he put together this year.
And he wants to be his own guy. He doesn't need to follow Caleb Williams to be the guy. And I think that's what he's trying to prove to himself. And he doesn't want people to be saying that he just follows people around. And talking on that wide receiver room, Marvin Mims, I don't think he's going to be a portal casualty. If he isn't on this roster next year, it is because he goes to the NFL. Do I think personally he would benefit from playing another year at Oklahoma? I do. Will he be a mid round pick right now? I believe so. I think he'll be a 3rd to 5th round pick somewhere in there. I don't see him being a round 1 or round 2 after the season because he's been a little bit of a victim of the quarterback situation, new coaches, everything else. I think a little stability and Dillon Gabriel takes the next step. I think Marvin Mims would take the next step and really put himself in a position to be a round 1 or round 2 guy. Most likely, I see him going in the 2nd round if he puts together a fantastic season just because he's a smaller guy. I do think that he is frustrated, but he's like, I put 1,000 yards, I can still go to the NFL and ready for a fresh start. So I wouldn't be surprised either way. I literally put him at probably a 50-50 coin toss. I wouldn't be surprised if he announced for the NFL. I wouldn't be surprised if he came back. What do you think?
Selfishly, or Oklahoma, I hope he comes back. But seeing his situation and realistically looking at how much can his draft stock improve, you're right. Probably going to be a late day 2 pick. He maybe get a chance at round 2, being picked in round 2 because how the NFL is now. You need a lot of receivers. You need a lot of receiver depth, and some of those star receivers are starting to age out. So teams are going to bring them in. First team that I think would be interested in bringing in a Marvin Mims is the Los Angeles Chargers. Mike Williams is consistently hurt. Keenan Allen is aging out and starting to get hurt a lot. So they need receivers for their young quarterback. It wouldn't be a crazy thing for him to leave. And I don't know how much another year would really benefit him with this offense, because you really got to think about it that way as well. I mean, Justin Jefferson was getting good, but the only reason he was a first round pick was because of the season that LSU had that year. They were the national championships. He had crazy stats. He was making big plays. Do we think that this offense is going to put Marvin Mims in the situation where he can put up, let's say, 1,600 yards next year, be a leader in touchdowns in the country, be a leader in receiving yards in the country, and be a clear number 1 option and round 1 option for teams? As much as I'd like to say yes, I really don't think that's a realistic possibility next year with this offense. Maybe in years to come, once there's a better established quarterback and Lumby's more established. But realistically, I think the cap with this offense is for sure round 2 because of the wide receivers and how much they're needed now in the NFL. If he can get a round 2, round 3 grade, I think it would benefit him most to leave for the NFL now. Get to the NFL as soon as possible. Start working with, training teams with whatever NFL team drafts you, so you can start bulking up a little bit more for what's needed in the NFL, and start working with the quarterback. And there's a lot of good young quarterbacks now that need wide receivers.
And I want to put it in perspective of, Marvin Mims has caught a lot of flack from people because he has had some drops, and that's fair. I mean, you can't be perfect. Not everyone's a Marvin Harrison Jr. that just doesn't drop footballs. But Marvin Mims did, this was his best year statistically he's ever had at the collegiate level. Freshman, he's 610 yards, 9 touchdowns. 2021, 705 yards and 5 touchdowns. This year, 1,006 yards and 6 touchdowns. He's improved yardage-wise every year, and generally the touchdowns are about the same. For such a bad year, he had his best year ever. I do think that there's a way for him to get into that 1,200 to 1,400 yard range, around 1,300. I do think that's the next step, and I think that's where this offense could go. Do I see him being 1,700 yards? Probably not, because the ball is going to be distributed too much to the running backs and Jalil Farouk and other receivers. But I see him being able to pick up a couple hundred more yards. The quarterback play at times, not having him at Texas, TCU. I mean, there were some games where he literally was playing with a quarterback that couldn't throw the football. And it's just I do think that there is a way for him to improve, maybe from a round 4 to a late round 2. Maybe he is a late round 2 guy just because of his athletic ability, and that could be. And if he gets a round 2 grade, he's gone. I there's no way he's staying, and I really think it's what it's going to come down to is what his grades are whenever he gets the report back, which I'm sure is going to be soon. It's going to be before December 5th, and then he'll make his decision, and you'll know. I bet we'll know by Sunday.
I think for sure by the bowl game. He's committed to the bowl game, playing that. So by bowl game for sure. I don't know if I'd be. I don't know if by Sunday because there might be more reasons why he would want to leave or return. But yeah, if he gets round 2, round 3, I don't even think he should come back. Again, as an Oklahoma fan, like that, the reason these kids come to college and play college football is so that they can make it to the pros. And a lot of the people that really hate NIL, their biggest argument is stop focusing on money now and focus on the potential earnings that you have once you make it to the NFL. Well, he's got that opportunity. He's got the talent to be there. Why are you wanting him to come back so much? Like he's doing exactly what a lot of those people are preaching, and yet their argument could potentially be, well, he didn't do well enough. Well, you just laid out he just had his best season statistically at the college level.
And the reason why I think it could be, by the end of the week is only because if he does get that grade, if I were him, I wouldn't play in the bowl game. Are you kidding me? Like at that point, you already have enough tape and people are grading you in round 2 or round 3. There's no point in going out and potentially tearing your ACL. Now, if he doesn't get the grades, that's what I'm thinking is, and I have no information, is just if he doesn't announce soon, that means he's not getting the grades that he was hoping for. Maybe put another game, film on, another game, and maybe that bumps him up, but it might not. And it might just be is what it is this year, and that's it. And that's why he might come back. I don't know. So I just think if he gets the grades that he wants, I wouldn't necessarily be surprised if he announced, because I personally would go and declare and not play. That's just my thinking. I mean, that's a lot of money.
It's fair. I mean, it's fair. But
yeah,
I know he mentioned it in one of the articles we tweeted out that he was playing. His intention is to play in the bowl game.
Yeah. And when he says his intention, that's when he might be like, well, my intention was that until I found out how much money I could make. But I wouldn't blame the kid. I'm not upset. I mean, we're going to go play like the tax bowl or whatever it is. So I wouldn't necessarily blame him. And the last guy, Dillon Gabriel, obviously Jeff Lebby in his conference said, yeah, we'd love to have him back. Or at least I hope. And Dillon Gabriel after said, it's too fresh. He's going to be back. He's going to be the quarterback in 2023, and I don't think it's really close. I think Jackson Arnold comes in and probably redshirts. I mean, could it be that Dillon Gabriel doesn't improve at all and then does leave the door open for Jackson Arnold? Potentially. I just have a hard time believing that Dillon Gabriel would not get better between now and summer ball. I have a hard time believing that, going through spring practices, having some, stability. And Dillon Gabriel is the guy, and I don't understand. I understand it's frustrating at times, but also Jeff Lebby put him in rough situations that were drops all over the field. There's a lot of different things. And I will say, how much better could it be if we let him go and bring in someone new?
Yeah, I mean, the points you made, there's really no reason for him to leave because he didn't perform well enough where he would make more money in the NFL being a 5th, 6th, 7th round pick than he would making the NIL money he does now at the college level. I mean, I'm assuming he's doing pretty well for himself as a college quarterback. Like, how much more are you going to get paid in the NFL? I mean, you look at a guy like Hendon Hooker. He is 24, 25 years old. He's older than some of the guys that are going into like year 2 or 3 in the NFL at the quarterback position. And before he got hurt, he was a Heisman contender, and people were talking about him potentially being a first-round quarterback. It doesn't hurt Dillon Gabriel at this point to come back. The worst that could happen worst case scenario is he gets hurt. and I hope that wouldn't happen for him. But worst case, like performance wise, he does very similar to that he did this year. Still the same draft grade that he is going to get this year, and he goes to the NFL draft and hopefully develops into a quarterback where he can be a good backup, or potentially get an opportunity like a Dak Prescott, where he gets a chance to be the starter, takes full advantage, and becomes a starter. There's no real benefit for him to leap to the draft at this point.
I mean, think about Kenny Pickett. Kenny Pickett before his last year, he was a guy that was probably maybe the 7th through 10th best quarterback on the big board and was probably going to go in the 4th round, 5th round. And then he ended up being a first round pick because of his last year. It only takes 1 year. I mean, you've got like Mitch Trubisky that puts 1 year of film on and he pops up and he's a first round pick for the Bears.
Especially at the quarterback position. I mean, you can name a ton of guys that really only have
Trey
one
Lance.
good year. Trey Lance had 1 good year. Mitch Trubisky had 1 good year. Kenny, Joe Burrow.
Yeah.
The guy from Ohio State that didn't go there to play school.
Oh, not JT Barrett, Cardell Jones.
Cardell Jones only had 1 good year. I mean, there's plenty of quarterback. It's really the quarterback position. If you can put 1 really good year out there, people are going to see you as a potential first-round quarterback. That's all Dillon needs.
Yeah. And I challenge everyone that thinks that Dillon should be gone. What's your solution? Let us know. I want you to comment. What is your solution? Let Jackson Arnold play? He very well might. And he might be the next Caleb Williams, and I'm not saying he's not, because Caleb Williams is a special talent and is going to be a number 1 pick when he's eligible in the 24 draft. For 100% sure that he will be the number 1 pick. He would be the number 1 pick today, and he would have been the number 1 pick probably in the last draft too if he was eligible after his freshman year, just based off of his potential. What is your solution? Go get Hudson Card? Come on.
Probably the same thing.
Yeah.
He'd be learning the offense, probably perform pretty similarly. Like Hudson Card's good, but is he a significant bump to Dillon Gabriel? Not really. I mean, you got Nick Evers, who would probably be slotted in as a QB1. He's got a year of experience with the playbook, knows the personnel a little better, but he would still have those adjustment periods where it's real time snaps. It's not practice snaps where he doesn't really get touched much because you got to protect the quarterback. He's going to get hit in real snaps. Same thing for Jackson Arnold. He, as much as people want to say that he is, and I agree, he is talent-wise, he's significantly more talented than Dillon Gabriel, just raw talent. But there's the adjustment period. And again, like we've said, there's exceptions to the rule, but those exceptions don't come around that often. When's the last time Oklahoma had a Caleb Williams? Not even Kyler Murray was that. I mean, he had Baker Mayfield in front of him, but Kyler Murray sat for 2 years behind Baker.
Yes.
Spencer Rattler sat 1 year behind Jalen Hurts, and Jalen Hurts came in being known as a guy that couldn't throw the football. It doesn't happen very often where you bring in a true freshman and he's the guy that's going to be the answer to your offense.
For sure. And I would argue that Caleb Williams is so talented, and people I know are probably hating this, but he's probably the best quarterback, that's one of the best, if not the best quarterback that's played at Oklahoma and has played at USC. He's that type of guy. I mean, there's not many Trevor Lawrence's, Andrew Lucks that come through, and he's a part of it. So, I just challenge everyone that thinks there's a better solution. Let us know. Maybe we're totally wrong. And I think the final point, and we talked about before we started this video, was to wrap this all together, is Oklahoma basketball. OU basketball is playing well. They're 6-1. Yeah, they dropped a game against Sam Houston State. I guarantee you if they played them right now, they would not lose. But this is year 2 of Porter Moser. 6-1, came off of a tournament victory down in Orlando, beat Ole Miss and for the championship, and beat a few other teams. Gosh, I'm trying to remember off the top of my head who they all beat, but they beat some pretty impressive teams. They're looking good. They're figuring it out. I don't know. I just feel like this is year 2, and this is what something could happen to a Brent Venables team that that people have been questioning. I'm looking up who they've beaten. Oh yeah, they beat Seton Hall, they beat Nebraska, and they did beat a handful of other small schools. But Seton Hall is a solid basketball school, and they beat them, and it wasn't very close. And they pulled away in the second half. So year 2 of Porter Moser, and Porter Moser didn't get much blowback because they played well last year, but they're going to be better this year. And this team was picked 7th in the Big 12, and they're playing well, and they're going to play Villanova on Saturday, and I think they beat Villanova.
Yeah, I'm excited for this basketball season. I know not a lot of people follow it, definitely not as much as football, but tune in every once in a while. It's a fun team to watch, and Porter Moser and this basketball team is an example of why you need some key players to return to help build the culture and the brand that the coach wants to have. I mean, he brought back Tanner Groves, who was a star player last year. Could he have gone into the NBA draft? Maybe. Probably would have been like a round 2 guy at best. Maybe more than likely been in the G League to develop him, but he stuck around for his last year of eligibility with Porter, and they're doing well. And Tanner, I don't know if his draft stock is going to go up because it is significantly harder to do that in basketball, because for the most part they like youth, since you don't have to be in college you only have to be in college for a year. But he could have gone from an undrafted guy to a round 2 guy that gets more opportunities than he would have before.
Definitely. I mean, they've got a solid team. They're going to make some noise. I mean, I think they're according to Joe Lunardi, they're an 8 seed right now, 8 or 9 seed. Not too bad after the run that they've started on. And I think they take care of business in Villanova. And I think you're going to see that improvement in this football team as well. So give it time. Porter Moser didn't get the blowback because they played pretty well, but also it is basketball at Oklahoma compared to football at Oklahoma. There's a little bit of a difference as far as what people care about. Stability, talented players make a big difference.
Facts.
All right. Well, this was a longer one. There was a lot of stuff to unpack here. Nearly an hour, right at about an hour. So, Jose, do you have an individual challenge for the people?
So for those of you that have been here a while, you know we sometimes do a man I love football moment of the weekend. We did it pretty early on in the season. Call it the MILF moment of the football moment of the weekend. So we're going to do that today as the end of video challenge. For example, mine is Kenny Dillingham's introductory press conference as the head coach at Arizona State. That dude is the type of guy that you want as the head coach of your football program. Not because of the success he's had as an offensive coordinator. If you haven't checked it out, go watch it on YouTube. The passion he has for wanting to build a atrocious football program to potentially competing for Pac-12 or whatever conference they're in, because the Pac-12 might not exist for much longer. He wants to make that program a marquee place for players to want to go to and fans to want to attend football games. I just thought it was awesome. He started crying because he's so passionate about being the Arizona State football coach, which is fucking crazy because who else would want to be the Arizona State football coach right now?
Other than you get to live in Arizona next to you, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's
people
pretty
cool. People don't even know that football exists in Tempe half the time.
I've driven by it on Saturday game days, never ran into traffic. Never.
Sounds about right. About what you'd expect, right?
Yeah.
My moment would be it's not our football, but it's football. Today, America ended up beating Iran 1-0. That was an awesome moment. It's good to see them bounce back and actually make the knockout round. And they might not win it, but the fact that they're showing some signs of life and improvement, I thought it was pretty cool that they won.
Yeah. Christian Pulisic gave up the family jewels for that one.
He did. So, but it was worth it. So I'm sure he'll be out there on Saturday. If you guys haven't watched any of the World Cup, I would recommend it. I'm not a big soccer guy, but every 4 years I'll watch the World Cup, and that's about it. So,
yeah.
But if you made it this far, we appreciate it. Hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, turn the notification bell on, and remember, check out our membership. It's $4.99 a month, and follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Apple, and Spotify. And remember, if you like and you comment on the video, it helps us out a lot. And we've got a lot of good content coming up with a ton of recruiting insight and information and things like that. We'll catch you guys next time.